Morning, everyone. Hope we're all well. Very quickly, I don't know if many of you have seen. I got sent this, and this appeared on my stream, but a lot of mates and a lot of friends and a couple of other YouTubers sent me this. There's a podcast called the 3 Knockdown Rule podcast. It was yesterday or the day before, and there's a really revealing and insightful and interesting interview of Alexander Usyk on there. He talks about the Fury fight in depth, and he talks about a lot of stuff in depth. It's a really, really, really great interview to see Alexander Usyk at length. So, 3 Knockdown Rule podcast. Go check it out. Well worth your time. I made a video a few months ago. This was post Joshua Ngannou. And it was about the fact that Anthony Joshua now with a newfound confidence in himself, a newfound confidence in his team, the fact that he now was the overthinking seemed to have been taken out of his ring process, and the fact that the way in which he dispatched Ngannou was largely down to the confidence, and having that confidence in his ability and having the overthinking taken away manifests itself in his technical and physical performance. And I got a lot of abuse after that. A lot of people said, oh, just because he's beat Joshua Ngannou doesn't mean anything. Just because he's beat, Francis Ngannou doesn't mean anything. It was Francis Ngannou, did what he had to do, did what he should have done, which is correct, but that wasn't the point. And I think a few people missed the point. The point of the video was, had we had a Joshua of 2 years ago, you wouldn't have seen a destruction in that manner. Having the confidence in yourself, confidence in your ability, having the overthinking process taken out of it allows you to almost subconsciously approach the fight differently, and that allows you to do different technical things and different physical things. So it wasn't I think a lot of people misunderstood the point. It wasn't the fact that he beat Francis Ngannou. It was the fact that having a newfound confidence allowed him to do it in a completely different manner. And that was the point of the video. Now, if we look at Daniel Dubois and his performance against Filip Hrgović, now, I many times had said I didn't rate Filip Hrgović as highly as other people did. I didn't rate Filip Hrgović as a elite level heavyweight. Nothing I'd seen suggested that. I had one comment on one of the Hrgović videos I made saying they thought that Hrgović was the most complete active heavyweight today. I don't know what they based that on. They saw something I didn't. So I never saw Hrgović as being a elite level heavyweight. But I also said that I believed he was all wrong for Daniel Dubois. And the reasons why I thought that were, the only really outstanding qualities for me of Filip Hrgović were the fact that he had a great chin. He seemed to have a really great chin. And he was quite a stubborn, intimidating, arrogant guy. And I'm going on what we'd seen of Dubois. I thought the only things that Dubois were going to struggle with was a guy that would still be there after Dubois had done his best work and landed his best shots, and a guy that would then come on strong in the second half in the manner he did against Zhilei Zhang. Now, if we go back, a lot of people said that the win over Jarrell Miller was the rebirth of Daniel Dubois, and this was a new Daniel Dubois, and all those demons had now been sort of erased. Although I agreed with that, I didn't agree fully. I thought Big Pharma Miller was of a level, so doing it over a Miller was certainly a different level to doing it over Hrgović, which I thought was a few levels up. This was the reason I believed Hrgović was all wrong. Now, going back to Anthony Joshua and the way he seemed to rebuild and the way that he seemed to have this newfound confidence, and if we compare that to Dubois, because similar things have happened, you could argue that Dubois' sort of newfound confidence and the rebirth of Dubois is almost more spectacular than Anthony Joshua's, in the fact that I fully expected Daniel Dubois at sort of by the midpoint after he'd hit Hrgović really had no effect, and Hrgović would start to land his shots. I really thought we'd start to see a wobble in Dubois. I believe there was a wobble in Dubois in the Miller fight around the mid-rounds, and full credit to Dubois. He came through that. He had a little patch where he looked like it might get to him, and he overcome and he was triumphant. Now, the things that stood out most for me against Daniel Dubois. Now, Daniel Dubois I've always liked technically. Either defensive issues, which we'll come to later, but in terms of his offensive style, what he does, the way he gets his punches off, he's quite fluid for a big guy. He's quite big for quite quick for a big guy. He moves really well for a big guy. Now, so that wasn't an issue. The fact that really spoke loudly to me about Daniel Dubois was the fact that Hrgović got off his right hand very well and very early. Now, Hrgović, I don't think makes the most of that right hand. I don't think technically he throws it in a way and lands that shot in a way that gets the most power out of it. I don't think it's a great right hand. Probably his best weapon, but it could be better. Nonetheless, he landed it at will against Dubois. And Dubois gave this impression of a guy that he got caught by the right hand. And not only did he get caught by the right hand, there was not even a sense that, in a confidence sense, Dubois almost seemed like he took pleasure in the fact of taking that right hand, knowing that he could take it, knowing that it was having no effect on him, and the fact that he could take it and come back. And I know from myself that sparring guys that were better than you, and the fact that you took the beating against the better guy but made it through and you knew you were never going to wilt, is an almost greater feeling than having your ultimate way with a guy and beating him comprehensively. The fact that when you're in with a guy who's better than you, hits you at will, but you know you could take it, and there was there was not even the option that you might wilt under this attack, is a great feeling and a great confidence booster. And it appeared to me that Daniel Dubois was really reveling in the fact that he was taking this right hand regularly, but knowing that it's having no effect, and mentally I'm strong. Mentally, this is not affecting me at all. That was one of the things that spoke most loudly to me against Daniel Dubois, the fact that he was taking this right hand regularly, but after the first few right hands, his confidence was tested, his chin was tested, and he knew in himself that this was not going to better me. This was not going to beat me down. I was stronger than this. And Daniel Dubois had a sense of, and he oozed the sense that he was never under threat by Hrgovic's right hand or Hrgovic's onslaught. His confidence built almost with every right hand that he took. His confidence grew in the fact that I can take these right hands, they're not having an effect. I know I'm strong enough to overcome this mentally and physically. So you could argue Daniel Dubois' rebirth and newfound confidence, and the way that affects his ability offensively to go about destroying a guy. Because make no mistake, had that fight not have been stopped, Daniel Dubois would have knocked out Filip Hrgović. 100%, no doubt, not in doubt at all. So all you can do is absolutely applaud Daniel Dubois in his rebirth and his newfound confidence. And I'm not even sure it's newfound confidence is the word. I think possibly, as many guys have said, Joe Stunner said this many times, Daniel Dubois was a boy in a man's body. And that was never more evident. And now his mentality has caught up with his physicality. He's now a man in both senses, physically and mentally. And it showed itself glaringly against Filip Hrgović. So arguably, he's done it in a more spectacular way than Anthony Joshua has done it. When you looked at the knockdown against Alexander Usyk and you know the moment in which he kind of quit, I don't kind of like that word, but essentially, you know, on an objective sense, that's what he done. He quit, but he took it was about 3 shots. He took 2 shots, then he took the last one, which was like a stiff jab, and he almost turned away and sat down as a way to relieve himself of the pressure that Alexander Usyk was putting on him. And he sort of sat down, and that was his escape. That was his get out against getting out of the pressure and the shots that were coming at him from Usyk. Against Hrgović, he could have done the same thing, but he didn't. He stood. He took them. Now, taking them is not to be advised, and I'll move on to defense later. But the fact that there was never an element, there was never a flicker that Dubois might fold or look for a way out under the pressure, under the barrage of them continuous right hands that were landing from Hrgović. So should only be applauded. And I don't think there's anyone out there that doesn't wish Daniel Dubois well and doesn't wish Daniel Dubois to move forward. And he has done. Getting on at the defence. I said in my preview video to that fight, I'm not a fan of the hands out in front stance that he has. You leave big gaps. Yes, your punches don't have to travel as far when you let them go, but defensively you leave areas around the body and you leave areas around the back and through the middle for shots coming at you. And this is where Hrgović had a lot of his success with the right hand. So this is something that is going to have to be dealt with going forward, because taking those right hands against Hrgović is one thing. If the proposed fight with Anthony Joshua at Wembley comes off, you cannot be taking those right hands against Anthony Joshua. That is suicidal. So they're going to have to work on that. Interestingly, Don Charles said in an interview before that one of the big areas that they've sort of corrected and worked on with Daniel Dubois was the defence. I'm not convinced by that, because I think if we're going to take one weak area from Daniel Dubois, I think it will be the defence, and he cannot take those right hands against someone like Anthony Joshua. Who do we pick if that fight comes off? Now, personally, I'd have to lean towards Anthony Joshua. I think Anthony Joshua is more complete. You'd expect that. He's been around longer. He's boxed at a higher level, got a lot more experience, so you'd expect that. But in terms of, if you look at both guys' offensive attributes, do we think Anthony Joshua punches harder than Daniel Dubois? Marginally, is there not in it? There'd probably be a case to say Daniel Dubois possibly punches harder than Anthony Joshua. Who's to know? They're both big guys. Both are really good offensively, technically, when they throw their offensive shots. Anthony Joshua is a fantastic offensive counterpuncher, one of the best in the division. But Daniel Dubois, as a power puncher, an offensive power puncher, arguably, other than Klitschko, the biggest puncher Anthony Joshua may have faced. I think Andy Ruiz is a great puncher as well. But I think clearly, are they the two biggest punchers in the heavyweight division right now? Possibly. So I'd lean a little bit towards Anthony Joshua on experience, and I think he's a bit more complete than Daniel Dubois. But Daniel Dubois is reborn, and Daniel Dubois now, to me, is a real danger man in the heavyweight division for anyone. As I said before, I didn't rate Hrgović as the elite level fight everyone sort of said he was or was going to go on to be. But certainly you would have put Hrgović, a lot of people would have had him around top 5. So for Daniel Dubois to take his best shots and essentially beat him up, because Hrgovic's face was an absolute mess at the end of that fight. I think all the cuts were caused by punches. I think they were worsened by the head clashes. I don't think Daniel Dubois was any intention with those headbutts. I think he just goes in and leads with his head a little bit. But to beat up Hrgović in a way that no one's beat him up before, and remember, not even Zhilei Zhang could put that amount of damage on Hrgović, and he had the whole fight to do it. Daniel Dubois smashed him up and made a mess of him. So, yeah. All credit to Daniel Dubois. He's a genuine danger man going forward. And who would bet against Daniel Dubois winning some version of, a proper version of a world title now? Not me. So going forward, really good stuff. Anyway, that's all from me. Just a little hats off to Daniel Dubois this morning. I'll see you all soon.